everybody, and good morning. Happy Tuesday. Today we're going to continue working with integers, but before we get started, let's go ahead and give these problems a try. It's our do now for the day. The video is going to pause to give you a second to find your solutions to A, B, C, and D, and input your answers. Also remember that if you were in class, you'd be checking in the mood meter as well, so make sure that you do that today before we get started. I'll be back on in a second with worked out solutions. Go ahead and check your work against my work here on the do now. For A, we find the solution to be positive 14. We subtract 12 minus 7 because they are opposite signs before we find the absolute value. We get positive 5 and then add 5 and 9, so that's 14. For B, we take the absolute value of 14 and the absolute value of negative 20. They're different signs, so we have to subtract them. 20 minus 14, which is equal to 6. But the value with the higher absolute value is negative, so it's negative 6. And then I bring down the other negative 6, I add them together, and my answer is negative 12. For C, I find the absolute value of negative 31 and negative 5. They're the same signs, so I add 31 plus 5, and I get negative 36. Then I add positive 12, which leads me to get negative 24. And finally in D, I have negative 45 plus negative 27 plus negative 41. Well, I take the first two add-ins and I do the absolute values of them. So I have 45 and 27. They're the same sign, so I add them together. And we get 72, and we keep the sign, which is negative. So it's negative 72 plus negative 41. When I add those together, I get negative 113. If you have any questions on how we do this, make sure you write them down so that when we have our office hours on Wednesday, you can hop on and ask how we find our solutions. All right, in your notes, you should be finding some space in that spiral notebook to write your objective for today. And today you all will be able to subtract positive integers. All right, before we get started on subtracting positive integers, I'm going to let you in on a super secret math knowledge. There's really no such thing as subtraction. I'll say that again. There's really no such thing as subtraction. Now we know this isn't exactly true. What I'm really trying to say is subtraction can also be written as the addition of a negative integer. And I'm going to show you why that is. Okay, so real quick, just off the top of your head, what is 8 minus 3? Right away, we know 8 minus 3 is 5. Well, how would I show 8 minus 3 on a number line if I were to model it out, right? So I would start at 0, and my first number is 8. But then what would I have to do with that number line to get to positive 5? I wouldn't add another 3, right? I wouldn't start at 0 and go back 3. We never start at 0 for the second addend. So instead, I actually move 3 spaces to the left, just like we would if it were an addition problem. So you see, 8 minus 3 is the same thing as 8 plus negative 3. And because we know that, then that means that our steps for subtracting positive integers are going to follow a lot of what we did yesterday and the day before, where we're using the absolute value. But we're going to add something a little bit different. So what I want you to do right now, I want you to take out your flow chart that we started last week, and we're going to fill in the subtraction sign side. here's our flow chart. I'm going to go ahead and pull up our example, and we're going to work on this flow chart side by side. Now your flow chart should be filled out over here. We should have a adding written here, right? Then we ask ourselves same or different signs. Over here though, it's going to be subtraction. And then in your notes, go ahead and copy down 10 minus 25. All right, so when we're subtracting integers, we always do a process called LCO. And I'm gonna make these letters fancy because this is super important. LCO is telling me to leave, change, and opposite. Go ahead and write that down on your flow chart. And that is going to help me to figure out how I go about this problem. So over here on my examples, I'm just going to write down LCO as a reminder. I'm going to leave the 10. I'm going to change the minus sign to a plus sign, and I'm going to take the opposite of 25, which is negative 25. So then on the flow chart, what I'm going to do, whoopsies, once we do leave, change, opposite, we then go to the adding flow chart, which is great because now I know exactly what to do with 10 plus negative 25. I find the absolute value of 10. I find the absolute value of negative 25. They're different signs, which means I have to subtract them. I keep the sign, or I change the sign to the sign of the value with the highest absolute value, which means my answer here is negative 15. Okay, let's try another example. Let's look at negative 27 minus 47. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to remind myself to do LCO. I see a minus sign, so I know right away I need to LCO. I'm going to leave negative 27. I'm going to change the minus sign to a plus sign. And 47 is a positive number, so the opposite of that is negative 47. And now I follow the adding flow chart. So now I find the absolute value of negative 27 and negative 47. They're the same signs, so I add them, and I get 74. Then I look to see what sign is shared. They're the same signs, and I get negative 74. You're going to have a chance to practice in just a second, but if you need to write down these examples, pause and fill out your notes. Okay, so now here are 3 questions that I want you to give a try. You're going to do this on your own, and you're going to input the answers into Edpuzzle to see if you get them right. I'll be back on in a second with your solutions. So here are the answers to our independent practice. Starting with number 1, I remind myself to LCO, to leave, change, opposite. So I leave 21, I change the minus to a plus sign, and the opposite of positive 30 is negative 30. Then I work through the steps that we find on our flow chart where we find the absolute value. We subtract them because they're different signs, and we keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value. Taking a look at these, if you have any questions, make sure you write them down so that on Wednesday you can touch base with us or with me on office hours. And make sure that you have these steps written down so that in a few seconds when we transition to our exit ticket or our activity, you're able to work through the steps the same way that I've worked through these for the graded activity. All right, so now that we've watched this video for the day, you're going to close this and go to Schoology, or you're already in Schoology, I guess. You're going to go to your assignment for the day, which will be a number of problems on subtracting positive integers. You may use your notes. Go ahead and write down your work. It'll be part of the check that I do on Thursday to make sure that you're taking notes while you're at home. Again, if you have any questions, make sure you're reaching out on Wednesday. Hope everybody has a great day.